Hi, this is Mr. Moss, and we're going to do a couple problems here to show us how we can compare fractions using benchmarks. And when we talk about benchmarks, we're looking at comparing things to 1/2. What's greater than 1/2, what's less than 1/2, or what's equal to 1/2. This is the worksheet for lesson 52. So in class, we worked on the even problem. So we did 4/12 and 4/6. So let's just go back and review this one as an example. And the thing we always want to start off with is, what's a fraction that's equivalent to 1/2, let me use my benchmarks here, equivalent to 1/2, that has a denominator of 12? Well, let's think. I know that half of 12 is 6. So 6/12 has to be equivalent to 1/2. And then I want to look and say, okay, if 6/12 is a half, what's 4/12? And I know that that is less than 1/2. So I'm going to put a little L there. Now let's try it with 4/6. Again, what's a fraction equivalent to 1/2 that has a denominator of 6? Half of 6 is 3. 4/6 has to be greater than 3/6. And if students get stuck in this, they can always draw it out with a pizza or a fraction bar. But I know that 4/6 is greater than 1/2. So then I have to say, if 4/12 is less than a half, and 4/6 is greater than 1/2, then obviously 4/6 has to be the larger of the two fractions. 4/12 is less than 1/6, or 4/6 is greater than 4/12. Number 3, we're going to do this one together. This is the first one for homework. 2/8. So again, we want to compare it to our benchmark fraction of 1/2. What's a fraction equivalent to 1/2 with a denominator of 8? Well, half of 8 we know is 4. So 4/8 is equivalent to 1/2. 2/8 then we know is less than a half. What's a fraction equivalent to 1/2 with a denominator of 2? Well, wait, that is 1/2. This one's an easier one. They've already given it to us in the simplest form, 1/2. This is equivalent. So again, we look to see if 2/8 is less than a half, and 1/2 is equivalent to 1/2 because it is 1/2, then obviously 1/2 is larger than 2/8. And I want to skip ahead here to number 8. Let's find an odd one that we are going to do together. Let's do number 9 together. We're going to skip ahead. So I'm going to start off with this 1/4 here. What's a fraction equivalent to 1/2 with a denominator of 4? Half of 4 is 2. 1/4 compared to 2/4 is obviously less than 1/2. 3/5. What's a fraction equivalent to 1/2 with a denominator of 5? And this is where we kind of stop dead in our tracks here, because half of 5 I know is 2.5. Now this is where we pause, because we know as mathematicians that we would never write a fraction 2.5 over 5. That would be a big no-no in the world of fractions. But we're going to do it right now, because let's just pretend that this was an okay way to write a fraction. If 2.5 is equivalent to a half, 3/5 is larger than 2.5. So it's greater than 1/2. And again, when I look at these, 3/5, if that's greater than a half and 1/4 is less than a half, then 3/5 is greater than 1/4. The last one I want to show you is number 14, and we started working on this one in class, but just as an example to help you guys as you go into your homework. 3/5, same situation here. What's a fraction equivalent to 1/2 with a denominator of 5? That's going to be 2.5. Not a proper way to write a fraction, but we're going to let it slide just for right now, because then I can compare 3/5 to 2.5. This is greater than 1/2. 5/8. What's a fraction equivalent to 1/2 with a denominator of 8? Well, that's going to be half of 8 is 4. 4/8. 5/8 is greater than 4/8. And in this situation, we take a look and we say, well, wait a minute here. They're both greater than 1/2. So how do I know which is bigger? We haven't learned that yet. So if you come across a problem like this one, where they are both greater than 1/2 or they're both less than 1/2, and you can't decide, well, of the two, which one is greater than the other, that's okay. Stop at this point, and then when we're working together, we're going to learn the next set of strategies in order to figure out in a situation like this, okay, they're both greater than 1/2 when I'm comparing to my benchmark, but how do I tell which one's bigger? We'll learn how to do that coming up. I hope this was helpful for you as you work on comparing fractions using benchmarks, lesson 52.